the market action is coming as President Trump is lashing out at China as the country allows its currency to fall to the lowest level in a decade. And the president tweeting just a few hours ago, writing, quote, "China dropped the price of their currency to an almost historic low. It's called currency manipulation. Are you listening, Federal Reserve? This is a major violation which will greatly weaken China over time." It's the latest escalation in the trade war that shows no signs of ending anytime soon. And Yahoo Finance's Jessica Smith is live in our D.C. bureau with the latest. And Jessica, how's the market digesting this latest outlash from President Trump?
Well, not well. China, as you mentioned, has devalued its yuan to the lowest level since 2008. It has also reportedly told state-owned enterprises not to buy any more U.S. agricultural products. And that's exactly the opposite of what President Trump wanted with his tariff threat. He announced last week there would be new tariffs on $300 billion in Chinese imports. And that was in an effort to put more pressure on Beijing to agree to buy more U.S. agriculture. But now China has really doubled down. Some analysts are saying this latest move is a sign that China has really just given up at this point on making a trade deal with the U.S. So now we're watching to see what the president does in response. You mentioned that tweet where he called China a currency manipulator. We're also wondering what he'll do on the tariff front. You'll remember that these tariffs that are set to go into effect on September 1st are now set at 10%. But earlier this year, he had threatened 25%. So that's something we'll be watching. Obviously, these ag purchases, if China stops purchasing corn and soybeans, that's going to be pretty damaging to President Trump's base. So a lot of moving parts here, a lot to keep an eye on as this develops, Zach.
All right, Jessica Smith from Washington, D.C. Guys, when we look at this, obviously it's kind of to be expected that this would have been China's weapon of choice, really, in retaliating, since there's only so much they can do. And we talk about how much they import from the U.S. They can try and go tit for tat on the tariff front, but that's ultimately not going to be enough.
And it was a pretty obvious weak point that China was able to zone in on this, because President Trump has acknowledged for the last few months, at least, that the Chinese monetary policy of devaluing their currency has hurt U.S. exports, right? I mean, to kind of put it in economics 101 terms, if a currency from abroad is devaluing against the U.S. dollar, that makes it harder for the U.S. to export those goods because they're invoiced in U.S. dollars, which makes it more expensive as the USD to Chinese yuan actually gets devalued. I think right now, if you were to inverse the chart that you're seeing, it would be it's actually popped up above seven yuan to one U.S. dollar. So that hurts U.S. exporters, which is the entire thesis of this Trump administration, which is trying to boost U.S. exports abroad. So it'll be interesting to see what President Trump does now. There are a few factors that go into foreign exchange, but one of them is actually monetary policy. If the Federal Reserve were to lower rates, that would mean an outflow of currency from the U.S., which in theory should take some steam out of the U.S. dollar. On the other hand, the Fed's dual mandate is for stable prices and unemployment, or addressing maximum employment, not necessarily stabilizing the U.S. dollar. So I'm not sure Jerome Powell is looking at this tweet this morning and saying, oh, wow, I got to do this right now.
It's also tough to really actually make good on your promise of price stability when there are so many factors here that the president and now China are pulling in this trade war as it goes tit for tat.
That's the instability, right, that we're seeing right now. And I think that that's one of the key roles. I'm also interested to see how this plays out for Mexico as well, because as we're seeing with China, sort of leaving in terms of the broad trade relation, we have Mexico coming in, and there's already tension there politically. So I'm interested to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, because that's one of the trade deals that his advisors over the weekend, the Wall Street Journal reporting that they wanted him to focus more on that trade front, a trade war that you can actually get done as you have a deal potentially hanging in the wings. Maybe focus on that instead and let the China thing backburn for a while as you can move on, since 2020 is fast approaching.
And of course, the elephant in the room still being the ratification of the USMCA.